Drive. I'm here with you until 8. Then, of course, it's the one and only Clive Bull. Now, between now and then, I want to talk about stop and search, which is a very controversial thing. I know when we've talked about this on the programme before, there's a lot of anger out there about how it is being implemented by the Metropolitan Police. Now, with me in the studio is Assistant Commissioner Simon Byrne. Welcome to the programme.
Hello, Ian. Thank you.
Now, we're going to take your calls. If you'd like to talk to Simon directly, the number to call is 0845 6060 973. Let's just start off with a few statistics. In the last 12 months, 312,645 people have been stopped and searched, which in itself seems an incredibly large figure. Now, of those, 46% were white, 29% were black, and 14.5% Asian. Now, those proportions are way out of kilter with the proportions in the general population. Why is that?
That's a really good question to start this from, because I do know it's a hugely important subject to Londoners. Firstly, the volume. I stand behind stop and search as a good crime-fighting tactic. And we know from other surveys that 7 out of 10 Londoners tell us, the Met, they want us to do it. I think the crucial test is how well do we do it and who do we stop and search. And I think those figures, we can get into different academic arguments about street populations as opposed to census data. And those figures are often the kernel of the debate, because I think where you go next is this is a power. So it's an intrusive power. And if you're just walking home and suddenly the police get out of car, they start to ask you to turn your pockets out, it's not probably to anybody sort of going about the normal business, not a pleasant experience. It's it's interfering with your privacy and your dignity. However, if you're a burglar and you've just come out of someone's house with the jewellery, you probably want us to find that burglar and return it. So I think it's about recognising, I think there's a lot of evidence to show in the last couple of years since the Commissioner came into the Met, we've listened really hard to Londoners and we've put in a range of things that show the picture is improving. Well, I can quote stats and figures, but people listening will probably tell me that about the personal experiences, about people being rude, not explaining why it was done. And we recognise it's a very emotive issue and we've got to keep trying.
We'll come on to those personal experiences in just a moment. I haven't got the comparative figures here from previous years. You're saying that maybe the figures have got better in terms of proportions, but there will be people who say, well, hang on a minute, 29% of people who stopped and searched are black, 14.5% Asian. That proves that there's still a problem of racism in the Metropolitan Police.
Well, I wouldn't recognise that. I think, again, there's been plenty of debate in the last 12 months about the legacy of institutional racism and the behaviour of our officers, and we do train them really carefully these days. Since this new campaign started, we've trained 19,000 police officers to remind them of the grounds on which you can exercise this part of the law. I've done that training myself, and we're actually evolving it from the spring, where we're using new ideas to show not about just legislation, but learning from those officers that are really good at this and balanced and fair to improve the street craft, as we call it, of our officers. And I think the important point for listeners to recognise is that, as you said in your introduction, the numbers have sort of halved in the last few years. So we're using the power more discerningly, perhaps, than we did in the past. But the ratios of people we're either arresting or finding with stolen goods or evidence has nearly doubled.
I'm thinking of people that I remember have phoned in on this subject in the past. I mean, the last time we covered this was probably a month or two ago. But I can remember one guy in particular who phoned in, and he seemed to me to be a perfectly decent member of society, very personal. And he said to me, I've been stopped 5 times in the last month. I drive a BMW. I don't think if I was a white person driving a BMW, I would have been stopped once. And on the face of it, you find it quite difficult to argue against that.
I think sometimes there are, maybe we'll hear some tonight, I was with somebody the other week when I was conducting a stop search, and he was recounting his experience, a young black man. And obviously that's a very topical issue in certain parts of the community of London. What we're trying to do is re-educate our staff about what is reasonable on the ground. So you can't just walk up to somebody and start turning their pockets out without a reason. It could be about the type of crime that's taking place locally, the time of day, the sort of area. We don't sort of recognise the assertion of sort of racial profiling, but it's about also remembering we also use technology these days to take out some of that error. So, for example, the cameras that read car number plates don't discriminate by the colour of your skin or your background. It's just that your car isn't insured or it's stolen, and then we'll take action.
Well, we're going to use technology today. Normally, Nick Clegg sits in that seat where you're sitting, so you're very honoured to be sitting there. But we have turned the cameras on, so if you'd like to watch us as well as listen to us, just go to lbc.co.uk. You can see what a real Assistant Commissioner looks like. The camera's directly on Simon and indeed me. I apologise, I haven't got my tie done up. I should have done that up first, shouldn't I? But there we go. Now, I want to hear your stories. What is your experience, your personal experience of stop and search? 0845 6060 973. And I don't want just to spend the next 35 minutes with a catalogue of people saying they've had a bad experience. Certainly from when we've covered this before, many people have also phoned in saying, well, actually, they were quite right to stop me. And I'll tell you now, I've been stopped and searched once in Whitehall after 7/7. I was carrying a sort of small suitcase behind me. Quite happily, I understood why they stopped me and wanted to look in my suitcase. Adam is in New Denham. Hello, Adam.
Hello, and hello to the Assistant Commissioner as well. Just want to give you a bit of perspective here and some thoughts. I'm a magistrate, and I realise that quite a lot of stop and searches where there's grounds to do so ends up in discovery of a bladed weapon, stolen property, and ends up being one of my cases. What I'm hoping won't happen is that in an immediate response to recent events, that the police think, oh, well, we'll go soft on stop and search, or we won't try and implement it in some areas where there's, shall we say, community tensions. I use inverted commas there, because it is a great tool. But as somebody who's, when he's younger, was stopped and searched, I know what's a great help is if it's actually explained. There has been this happening in this area, somebody matching your description or you matching your description have been seen doing that. For that reason, that's why I'm going to blah, blah, blah search.
Simon.
Well, thank you, Adam, and it sounds what you do for us as a magistrate as well, because it's an important part of the criminal justice system and making sure we get the checks and balances right. But in relation to your suggestion, I think firstly, in the modern environment, we should be explaining the reasons for a stop search and also what people can do afterwards they've been searched in terms of access to the record. And indeed, these days, we are using new technology. We have an app people can use to sort of tell them about their experience, or an online survey. In relation to your point, I absolutely recognise it. I don't sort of subscribe to the concept of, if you like, no-go areas across London where the police can't take action. Sometimes we have to be sensitive to the context in which we're policing, either by the numbers of officers or the style. But absolutely, one of the key things we will stress with officers, it's an excellent crime-fighting tool to take guns and knives off our streets, and we wouldn't see that changing. What is interesting, when you get into some of the details, is the proportion of people we arrest in total across London is actually rising as a result of stop search, which tends to suggest, alongside the other measures, we're doing it more smartly and intelligently and getting better results.
Right, David is in Tottenham. Hello, David. What would you like to say?
Hi, basically I grew up in Tottenham and now I live in Reading, but I travel a lot to visit my family and friends that live there. Just over a year ago, I was travelling with my daughter and my new partner up to Tottenham, where I was pulled over, and the excuse that was used, that I was being pulled over, was there's been burglaries in the area, and I drive a nice car in a not-so-nice area, so that was the initial for stop and search, just to make sure the car belongs to me and I haven't burgled it, which, fine, fair enough. Well, you can't argue with the police anyway. Once the checks were done and the car obviously realised belonged to me, then they was like, oh, we have to search you just to make sure. So they searched me for drugs, which they couldn't find on me. They turned my car upside down in front of my 7-year-old child. And then they basically arrested me to sort of take me back to the station and strip search me, which when I got to the station and got strip searched, then I was released, and basically I got told, sorry, but it's what happens in the area, basically.
Did they give you a reason why they wanted to take you to the station and strip search you?
Because they couldn't find nothing in my car, and their suspicion was that, but basically, after they checked my car out and see that the car belonged to me, then they started asking me where I work, how can I afford to own a, because I'm young, I'm only 24 now, I was 22 at the time, but they said to me how it is I can afford to drive an Audi, how it is I can afford to basically insure my car, and what it is that I'm doing in an area that is known for drug use or drug offences, basically. So it made me feel like I was being penalised, basically, for having a job, for driving a nice car, for insuring my nice car, and basically just for being in that area visiting family.
Simon?
Sadly, we do hear of stories like yours, David, and probably sometimes, despite the improvements, too often. On what you're telling me, that's not really the sort of Met I'd like to see. I'm taking at face value all the things you've told me. Sometimes when you speak to the officers, I'm not attacking your character, but you do sometimes find there's a different part of the story. I'd be disappointed that we're searching you in the way you're describing in front of a young child. And we need, if you've gone through that experience of a strip search, that's pretty intrusive.
I mean,
and we need strong grounds for that. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, if he's driving a nice car, he's a young guy, okay, that might arouse a little bit of suspicion. But if he's with his partner, if he's with a child, now, okay, you could say, well, they might be covering for him in some way. It's a bit of an odd thing to do, isn't it?
I can't sit here and pretend this sounds like a great story, and I don't know what you've done about this, David, but I'd encourage you, if you're not happy, either to let us know for the studio who you are, and we can get back to you and find out what's gone on, or report this to your local neighbourhood inspector, and we should have a look at it to see what has happened.
Well, David, there's enough. If you want to take this up, I mean, okay, well, I think you said it was 2 years ago. Stay on the line, and my producer will take your details and we'll pass them on to Simon and his team. More of your calls to come, 0845 6060 973. As I say, you can watch us as well as listen to us on lbc.co.uk. Just click on the link, and we come up. I've got it on my computer here. It's very, very disturbing watching us ourselves as we're broadcasting, but maybe I'll switch that off in a second. 0845 6060 973 if you'd like to put your questions on Stop and Search to Assistant Commissioner Simon Byrne. You're listening to LBC 97.3. It's Ian Dale at Drive. It's 7:31. And here with the latest news headlines, it's Glenn Thompson.
Labour is calling on David Cameron to state clearly that he would stop bonuses of up to 200% at Royal Bank of Scotland. The Prime Minister says cash bonuses at the taxpayer-backed lender will continue to be limited to £2,000 next year, but he hasn't made assurances about payments in shares. Nick Clegg has ruled out senior peer Lord Ranard playing a role in his 2015 election campaign, but the party's former chief executive is set to return to a position on a committee after being told he will not face disciplinary action over claims of sexual harassment. A report has suggested that Lord Ranard apologise to the female activist and make a commitment to change his behaviour. Business news, Mark Carney says he expects house prices to continue to rise this year, but then the rate of increase will slow down in 2015. His comments to MPs come as figures show a slight fall in mortgage lending in November. npower has continued to receive the most complaints of the big six energy providers. Figures show the firm got 250 complaints per 100,000 customers in the 3 months to September. That's up 25% on the previous record. And Taylor Wimpey is the latest developer to report a rise in demand. The average selling price of private homes rose by 7% to £210,000 over the year. Finally, in the city, the FTSE 100 closed up 53 points at 68.19.
LBC 97.3 Business.
With cyberstreetwise.com. Protect your family and your business from cybercrime.
London's weather, patchy rain continues this evening, staying mild tonight with lows of 8 degrees Celsius. And right now at the Gherkin, it's 10 degrees. LBC 97.3, it's 7:33.
From the LBC 97.3 Travel Centre, I'm Adam Moore. The A3 is still partly blocked towards town near Cobham after a collision by the Paynes Hill exit. Very slow northbound on Warwick Road. That's because of the waterworks between Old Brompton Road and the A4. You're all having to squeeze past there along the inside lane. The queue's all the way back to World's End and Cheney Walk. And South Croydon, Brighton Road, that's partly blocked both ways by a collision at Halling Road. And in Wood Green, the lights are out on green lanes at Turnpike Lane Station. Keeping London moving. Your next travel updates in 15 minutes.
LBC 97.3 Travel.
With GoToMeeting. Avoid those delays by meeting online from anywhere.
LBC 97.3 Ian Dale at Drive.
With RAC Accident Care. Taking the strain should the worst happen this winter.
Hey, you're looking so chilled. You're almost sliding off that sofa. You're one blissed out landlord, huh? Probably something to do with that year's free rent guarantee from Aldermartin, Baines & Cuthbert. Yeah? Hey, that's enough to chill a polar bear. See abc-estates.com or call 0800-888-6688. That's 0800-888-6688.
A safe business is a business your customers can trust. Next week, LBC 97.3 presents a special report on cybercrime in partnership with cyberstreetwise.com. We'll investigate the impact it can have on your company and how protecting your business can boost reputation and growth. Find out more at cyberstreetwise.com and listen to LBC 97.3 all next week.
Sitting at a desk for long hours in the wrong type of chair can be very hard on your back. But how do you choose the office chair that's right for you? Back 2 is the answer. We offer a wide range of office chairs, sit-stand desks and professional no-obligation advice. Too busy? No problem. We'll carry out a workstation assessment in your office. Back 2, open every day in Wigmore Street and online at back2.co.uk. Get back to business with Back 2, the office chair experts.
My mortgage is in arrears.
My buyer fell through.
I'm facing repossession.
If you need to sell your home fast, Property Rescue could buy it for cash, whatever its condition. Once more, we can exchange contracts within 48 hours and will even pay your standard legal fees. So to sell your home fast, call Property Rescue on 0800 1313 999, 0800 1313 999, or visit propertyrescue.co.uk. Property Rescue, for a quick sale for cash.
LBC 97.3, Ian Dale at Drive.
7:36 here on LBC 97.3. I'm talking to Assistant Commissioner Simon Byrne. He's Assistant Commissioner for Territorial Policing. If you want to watch us as well as listen to us, just go to lbc.co.uk, click on the link on the front page, and we will mysteriously appear on your computer screen. What does Assistant Commissioner for Territorial Policing mean, and what does Territorial Policing do?
I suppose it's a good police way of overcomplicating things. I'm actually in charge of policing London, of the 32 boroughs, all the local neighbourhood teams, the response teams that answer your 999 calls, and local CID. So it's a fantastic job. And I have over 20,000 people working on behalf of Londoners doing a great job.
Now, we are talking about stop and search. Want to get your calls, your stories about your experiences of stop and search? 0845 6060 973. The people that we've talked to so far have given sort of some fairly negative experiences of stop and search. Do you accept that there are people who are still being unfairly targeted?
I think the facts sort of support some of that assertion, because every time I stand here and quote a fact and figure that's getting better, someone will ring in and say I've been stopped 5 times or 6 times and how it was done. I think the separation we're trying to look at is that we do monitor, for example, the most stopped people in London. There's one in a borough south of the river who's been stopped over 20 times in a month. But the separation again is that person a burglar, a robber, someone that we want for another serious crime, or they're just a normal person going out their daily business who keeps getting victimised, in inverted commas, by the Met for no justifiable reason. And that particular incident is criminal.
All right. Steve's in Tunbridge. Hello, Steve.
Good evening. Hello. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Yeah.
All right. Yes. Mine is more of a suggestion rather than a question, perhaps. But what it is that I think stop and search is a good idea. I mean, I'm a black male, and if the statistics show, which they do, that most crime is committed by black people, if that's a politically correct term to say, then surely the police shouldn't be afraid of political correctness. They should just be cracking down on the criminals. I mean, for example, myself, I was on my way to Heathrow Airport one day to fly out, and I used the train and the tube. So on the London Underground, a group of young lads came up to me and asked me drugs. Now, they must have assumed because I'm a black individual that I'm doing that. Now, I obviously felt a bit offended because I'm obviously not, but because the fact that they can point out that, okay, this chap might be, and surely the police should also be suspicious of a group of people who potentially could cause ills to the society. So it's just a contribution, really.
Well, I think that's quite an interesting point to make. I mean, one of the things you said there, you said, well, if black people commit most of the crime, I mean, that's obviously not correct. Percentages of population, the proportionate amount of crime that is committed by people who are black. I mean, and we shouldn't be afraid to say that.
No, I think there's a few things there. I mean, it sounds like a different experience you've had there, Steve. And I think there's a few bits. I'm glad you support the general police use of the power. I wouldn't stand behind the sort of the notion that black people in London commit most of the crime. There are certain crime types where different populations feature, and it's not just a crime by race. There's sometimes gender comes into it as well. But I think what we've got to do is get the balance right, that where if you've got a crime type in a particular part of London, it might be a housing estate, it might be a sort of a shopping centre, we will obviously, a whole idea of neighbourhood policing is to get good information terrorising your neighbourhood. Black people that we crime, and there'll be young white people that we want to capture for crime. So it's about making sure that we tailor our response very much to the context and the local understanding and the problems in that community. So
is there also a problem with police officers on the ground, times thinking to themselves, oh, I better be...
No, we may even have a colleague from the Met phone in. Sometimes you never know, do you? But
change your name if you like.
Sometimes, you do speak to people, and you look at the general conversations we'll have in the Met, and people will say that there are times they're now anxious of using some of these powers for fear of it being investigated if it goes wrong. And there's also an assertion, we do a lot of work to make with various interest groups, be it at Met level or locally, that, well, these figures are well and good, it's only because you're hiding what you're doing. Because there's two debates that run here. We talk about stop and search, where we actually sort of empty your pockets out.
Steve, thank you very much. Milan, is it Milan?
Hi, I would say that I'm British Indian, and I've been stopped a couple of times in the car, white officers, and it's been totally fine. We've had a conversation, they've explained why they pulled me over, and think about it, they're probably right, because I wasn't bullied or pushed around, and we ended up having a conversation, and it was all a man of stop and search. I mean, because I've been a victim of gun crime, and if the policeman in my area, Asian male there, I don't want to stop and search him because I may be accused of being a racist, and that person ends up having a weapon and committing a robbery, I'll be stop and searching for fear of being a racist. I'm a fan of it because I've been a victim of crime, and so whether it's white, black, purple, pink or grey, you should be stopped and searched if there's a valid suspicion. But it's more about conversation rather than...
In favour of purple people being stopped and searched. Milan, thank you very much for that. David is in Woolwich. Hello, David.
Hello.
Hi, what's your point?
I had my own experience. Fair enough, it wasn't in London. The opposite direction to a police car which had passed me by, and for some strange reason, it did a U-turn and started chasing me. It had lights on, blaring, everything, the works. And I stopped, and they told me to step out of the car. I said, well, you should have routine stop. And I said to them, quite frankly, I'm a law student, and I really need you to define what a routine stop is to me. Now, there were two of them. The first one was still trying to get me out of the car to explain to me that it was just a routine stop. And the other one with my details. It took him 3 times. He took the car out again, back to the car, out again. Every time I confirmed it, I was getting more irate. Now, I gave them ample opportunity to define to me where these cars doing a U-turn on the road and chasing me down the road. And then you are telling me...
You had the pace code in the boot of your car?
Yes, I do.
Why would you have that?
I'm a law student at the time, and one of the materials we had was the pace code.
Okay, no, I just thought it sounded a bit odd. Simon, what would you like to say to David?
It does sound an odd experience. The reasons why West Yorkshire Leeds acted in a certain way, I don't know how. So I would be disappointed if police country are treating people in a way that's not justifiable. It's rude. Again, this can get into, and I appreciate the technicalities of some of this. The language might have been clumsy. I don't want to get too much into that. I still exist under the Road Traffic Act, and sometimes...
But you must have a reason, surely.
You can actually just ask people to produce the driving licence. I think where it gets confused sometimes is, obviously these days we have a big push, for example, on taking uninsured off the roads of London. We've seen nearly 90,000 in 2 years, which shows you the scale of the problem, and we're making our roads safer by doing that. We can put labels on it in the Met about what category, if you like, to people that experience it, what we would call one thing may be seen as something else. And I do think to actually help and ideas that's not insured is one way that converse what happened in...
Here with me until 8 o'clock, he's Assistant Commissioner. Do you think that... etiquette training, need to be polite, because the general public can actually be the greatest advocates for the good experience, even if you are being stopped and searched. We heard from a caller there who had a good experience, has probably told all of his friends, well, actually, they were really polite. It worked very well. 0845 6060 973. It's 7:46. In the LBC 97.3 Travel Centre, it's Adam Moore.
In Leytonstone, the high road's closed at Kirkdale Road because of a fire in a building near the tube station. South Croydon, Brighton Roads partly blocked both ways. A collision there at Halling Road. In Wood Green, the lights are out on green lanes at Turnpike Lane Station. And on the trains, disruption to First Capital Connect services out of St Pancras. That's because keeping London moving on
LBC 97.3 Travel.
With GoToMeeting. Don't be late. Hold your meeting online from anywhere.
LBC 97.3 Ian Dale at Drive.
With racshop.co.uk. Keep motoring this winter with over 80,000 parts and accessories.
Life is ever changing. We have kids, take out mortgages, we change careers, move away, stay together or drift apart. Changes in your personal circumstances could affect your life. When was the last time you reviewed? We work hard to find for an initial free policy review, fs.co.uk. That's crystalfs.co.uk.
My grandson tells me that I'm a silver surfer, one of the older generation who uses the internet and knows that spam isn't just canned meat. If you'll look at the Chair Centre's excellent website, thechaircentre.co.uk, where you can see some of their superb high-seated indoors. If you're not a silver surfer but want to know more about the Chair Centre, call them on 020 8368 0281 or visit them at 386 Bowes Road, just by Arnos Grove Tube. The Chair Centre, making life a little bit easier.
We're here with Sarah. Right, which of these statements about the underground is false? 1, despite being called the underground, nearly 60% is actually above ground. 2, the birth on the underground was in 1924. Or 3, Wi-Fi isn't available in any station.
I think it's number 1.
Ah, sorry Sarah, it's actually number 3.
Oh.
It's false because Wi-Fi is available in 121 stations. Just one of many improvements we've made that makes your life a little better.
Transport for London. Every journey matters.
Activation required. Wi-Fi services available in station only. Use of Wi-Fi subject to Virgin Media's terms, eligibility and conditions.
Hi, I'm Paul Devens, CEO of WG Office Supplies. Right now, we're on the lookout for target-motivated telesales professionals. If you've got a proven track record in sales, we've got a lucrative result-driven package for you with very attractive bonuses. You can work full or part-time at our Dartford head office or even from home. So to take your telesales career to a new level, email careers@wgo.co.uk. That's careers@wgo.co.uk.
LBC 97.3. Coming up at 8, Clive Bull.
In the first study of its kind, the official watchdog reports antisocial behaviour on public transport in London is on the rise, with suggestions that school children are the worst offenders. Do you feel safe travelling on London's buses and tubes?
London's biggest conversation with Clive Bull this evening at 8. LBC 97.3.
Bull coming up at 8 and then Duncan 10. You can go to LBK and you can watch us. There's a novelty for us. It's normally only Nick Clegg that gets to be watched on the website, but we have Assistant Commissioner for Territorial Policing Simon Byrne with us, taking your calls on Stop and Search. The number to call 0845 6060. A week for you and your colleagues with the aftermath of the Duggan inquest. I talked to your colleague Mark Rowley last week, and he was spat at outside the courts, which can't have been a very pleasant experience for him. What's been the reaction from people generally to that? Have you found?
Within the force, or sort of
within the force and the way that you've been treated.
Well, I think certainly the experience. Obviously, you spoke to Mark. What he went through last week that was not pleasant. I think people, though, we're quite a stoic organisation, so that I do admire the fact that we keep bouncing back. So sometimes there's a lot of debate about officer morale, but as we're sat here now, somebody will be doing something remarkable on behalf of Londoners. And
but there does seem to be a recognition that bridges need to be built in certain areas of London and with certain communities.
We recognise that, and I think we're doing a number of things, really, because this is not a quick fix, flash-in-the-pan response to yesterday's headline. We're investing 2,600 extra officers into neighbourhood policing teams. So we're putting local policing very much at the heart of how the Met operates. And as Mark said yesterday, my colleague, when he was in Parliament, we will be making an announcement about a senior officer who will spearhead all of the issues that have come up recently in terms of developing our response to working better with particularly young communities across London.
Daniel is in Sutton. Hello, Daniel.
Evening, Ian.
Hi,
Evening,
what's your
Commissioner.
question?
Hi. Commissioner, I've got a question for you. I've personally been subject to over 100 stop and searches myself, and my question relates specifically to plainclothes officers being used in stop and search operations. You mentioned to the previous caller that police officers can stop you and check your licence. Can I ask you a question at this stage? Can plainclothes officers do that?
Not in an unmarked vehicle, no. Not just to check you're right. If they're, it gets quite technical. If they want to stop your car, they need sort of equipment that would identify them as a police officer, blue lights and such like. So if it's a marked car that's not equipped like you.
Right, because I've been involved in a number of incidents. Just to give you some background, I wrote to the Commissioner back in November 2011, and his David Searle wrote to me on the issue of plainclothes officers unlawfully exercising Section 6.3 of the road, officers with vehicles stopped, occupants out, and also it needs to be certain triggers. I've had an officer stick his head in my car and say that he could smell cannabis. There was no cannabis. I got two members of the public to immediately do the same test, and they couldn't smell cannabis, and the officer looked silly, and that was just an excuse to get access to the vehicle and to search the vehicle. So I just wanted to raise that issue as to why so many plainclothes officers are blatantly breaking the law in the streets of London.
Okay, well, it sounds like you've had a lot of contact with the Met, so it's all that issue might have been able to give a better reasons behind it. Officer, you can't stop and search somebody as a police officer. We all carry, you've probably seen this, what we call a warrant card, which is basically an identity badge. It will show Metropolitan Police Service, the officer's photograph and the number, and that should be part of the process that any plainclothes officer goes through in terms of proving to you they're a police officer. And if the car is properly equipped, we know we can safely stop people that are driving the car, but it's always preferable if it's done by a uniformed car because there's no room for doubt.
Daniel, thank you for that. Paul in Lewisham says, you suggested that the police might need training in etiquette. Has it not dawned on you that those members of the public being stopped might need some etiquette training too? We have a public now who have no respect for anything, and in many circumstances their default response is aggression. Well, we touched on this a little bit earlier. Do you accept that there does need to be a bit of a change in attitude amongst some of your officers? We all know about the sort of the circumstances, I would say, too often. And as I say, those police officers are ambassadors for the Metropolitan Police Force, and if someone goes away feeling that they've been mistreated, that person is going to tell their friends, will tell their friends too, in a situation that I think we have at the moment where the respect for the police is, I wouldn't say it's an all-time low, but certainly lower than it ought to.
That's the kernel of some of the discussion, and I think there's a number of things really. Firstly, in relation to what we're talking about and impressions, they last. So that if that one contact with the Met isn't a positive one, people, it's like any experience of customer service where you're trying to book a meal, get your McDonald's, and people are rude. You remember that and you'll tell a lot of other people. The story of last week was about the Met needs to go on a charm offensive, and I think to a certain extent we recognise that. That's why we're
more charm, less offensive.
But because I think there's probably some we need to look at ourselves sometimes and think we're here to enforce the law. Do we have to hide behind the uniform all the time? Can we be more relaxed about how we talk to people? I mean, frankly, when you looked at some of the crowds in Tottenham with their hands in their pockets, there was an opportunity. It might have been sometimes it's an opportunity just to begin a dialogue because most people are reasonable. I'm not here to sort of try and socially re-engineer the UK, so what the public think of the police, it goes back to the origins of our history. I'm sat here tonight as a citizen, as Robert Peel said, in uniform. So I have to do this job, but it's only because you let me. So that the whole sort of debate about respect for the police, I think it's about reflection of society. We are in sometimes a conflict business. We have to my officers deal with some very difficult people, some very aggressive people and some very dangerous people, and let's not forget that. And there's a balance here to sort of...
Who's in Edgware? Hello.
Pointless rhetoric. It's about what you actually do about the actual experience. Now I'll get on to my point.
Garth, you need to be quick. We've only got about a minute and 3/4 left.
I will be very quick. I'm 52 years old, and the odd years I've been driving, I've been stopped over 300 times. I've always driven sports cars, and I once complained to a colleague saying, I always get stopped. He said, it's the kind of car you drive. I said, okay, for a month, you drive my car, and I will accompany you, and I will record every time we get stopped. For 1 month, he drove my car, we never got stopped. I then drove his less exotic car. Within the first week, I got stopped 3 times. one of those, and one actually got stopped twice within about an hour of each other.
Well, Garth, I'm going to stop you there because we literally only have a minute left. Simon, that call sums up the problem, doesn't it?
It often does. I mean, it doesn't sound something that has been a great experience for Garth. It's happened over almost a lifetime in terms of 300 times at age 50. Well, I don't know what your recent experience is, Garth, but we're trying to sort of stamp out, if you like, the exceptions from what we see as normal sort of police activity. Most people, if they're stopped, are stopped once and then we never see them again. The criminals, I want my officers to stop them an awful lot because I want, if they've got grounds, them to stop burgling your homes, sort of plundering your sort of businesses or robbing you on the streets. This goes back to the heart of where we started. It is an effective crime fighting tool. We have to use it wisely. And let's remember, despite some of the issues we've heard about in your programme tonight, the complaints that the Met get about this issue have halved in the last 2 years.
Well, Simon, we thank you for coming in to have you back, I hope, at some point in the future, very near future. I'm Ian Dale. I'll be back tomorrow at 4. Coming up now, it's Clive Bull.
Ian, thank you. And after the news, in the